Welcome to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I'm so glad you're with us today. We are joined by Ted Lieu, member of the California State Senate, and you authored a bill, first in the nation, signed by the governor, that prevents what we call as gay conversion therapy for minors.
Yes.
Explain what that is and why you felt we needed this bill in the state of California.
This is a therapy, also known as reparative therapy, that has no medical basis and in fact has been shown to harm patients. And it's the discredited idea that you can convert someone from gay to straight. The medical studies show that you can't do that, and when therapists try, they will harm their patients, including feelings of guilt, shame, depression, and some of them commit suicide.
How did Ted Lieu, an attorney, a former member of the military, or current member of the military, not particularly well known as being affiliated with the gay rights movement, get involved in this?
So I've always had a passion for civil rights issues. I've carried numerous civil rights pieces of legislation. But last year I saw a series of news segments on reparative therapy, and they followed someone by the name of Kirk Murphy, who went through something called the Sissy Boy experiments. And they did all sorts of crazy things to him. His mom was told to ignore him and be bad to him if he played with girls' toys.
How old
show
was
him
he?
lots of love when he played with boys' toys. He was in grade school. And then he was held up by these reparative therapists as a model of someone they converted. He later committed suicide.
Wow.
And I thought, this therapy is evil. So earlier this year, Equality California, the lead sponsor of the bill, came to my office, and I jumped at the opportunity to carry it.
Again, you know, we all support all different types of people, but why Ted Lieu? There are plenty of other people in the legislature that are known for championing gay rights. That's not to say you can't, but you know where I'm going.
Yeah, so I view it both as civil rights and also as protecting children. So last year, as you remember, I had a first in the nation bill that was signed by the governor that bans indoor UV tanning for children, people under 18. And to me, this is similar because we're causing harm to people, and government routinely steps in and prevents parents from causing harm to their children.
And let's talk about that, because what I have heard on the street is we should not get involved in a parent's decision as it relates to medical, psychological care. If they want their child to go to a certain type of therapist, it should be their right.
So I am a parent of two rambunctious kids.
Yes, you are.
And I'm a strong believer in parental rights, but we don't allow parents to harm their children. So, for example, we don't let parents have their child drink whiskey at a bar, whether or not the parents want them to. We don't let them have their kids buy cigarettes, even if the parents consent. We don't let minors in California get electroshock therapy, even if their parents want them to.
Even for depression?
Correct.
I didn't know
Adults
that.
can, but children cannot.
I didn't know
We
that.
don't allow children to get psychosurgery. We let adults do it.
What kind of surgery?
Psychosurgery. So there's a whole host of areas where government steps in and says to the parent, you cannot harm your child.
Now, does this law apply to non-licensed therapists?
It does not. So we approach this from the standpoint of the practice of medicine. It applies to psychiatrists, psychologists, and licensed therapists. So if you're going to practice a therapy that has no basis and has been discredited by the medical community, then we have the authority to regulate and ban it.
But is it broad enough then, this law?
Yes, because we have to balance both legitimate therapies versus this particular therapy that is not legitimate, and we crafted their language very narrowly to apply only to situations where the psychiatrist or psychologist seeks to change your sexual orientation.
But what if someone who is not licensed is engaging in conversion therapy?
They can still do that, and it doesn't apply to religion, so priests and pastors can still teach whatever it is they want to teach about their religion. This only applies to people who are practicing medicine. And we're basically
So is it broad enough?
So it is the first law in the nation, and we sometimes go by steps. So I think at this point it will stop the worst abuses, because there's a difference between someone who goes to, let's say, a priest for spiritual counseling about their sexual orientation versus getting a doctor's advice. And if you have a medical doctor saying, yes, I can convert you from gay to straight, and then you can't do that, you start feeling really bad about yourself.
I understand that as we speak today, a couple of lawsuits have been filed against this legislation. It happened very quickly, and the basis of those lawsuits focuses on the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. I guess the freedom of religion is not in play here because, as you said, it does not apply to clergy. So talk about the speech aspect.
So it's a ridiculous lawsuit. The First Amendment has never been held to apply as protecting psychiatrists or psychologists from medical malpractice or abuse, just because how they practice medicine involves speech. Psychiatrists and psychologists get sued all the time for medical malpractice, even though what they're doing is saying things. So the First Amendment doesn't protect the practice of medicine, and that's what this law is about. It's saying you can't do a therapy that the entire House of Medicine has rejected. The American Psychiatric Association has said this therapy causes great harms. Do not do it. And the American Psychological Association has said the same thing. So the First Amendment does not shield or protect psychiatrists from engaging in medical malpractice or abuse, simply because they happen to be speaking when they do it.
Well, that also begs the question, this law only bans the use of this therapy for minors.
Yes.
If you're 19 years old, you could have this therapy.
So again, in society, we let adults do risky and stupid things. And so we took the view that adults, if they want to go to get this therapy, they can, but children cannot, because one, they are developing, they are much more vulnerable psychologically. And second, a lot of times children are forced into these therapies against their own will by parents who are sometimes unsuspecting. They don't know this is harmful to their kid, but the therapist markets it as this is fine, I can change your kid, and they don't tell the parent this can actually cause them great harm. So
as California goes, so goes the nation. And my question is, I know that your tanning bed bill jumped to New Jersey, I think it was.
So Vermont enacted it actually last year, and other states are looking at it, the tanning bill.
The tanning bill.
Correct.
What about the gay conversion therapy bill?
So New Jersey has now stated
New Jersey.
They're interested in introducing a similar bill.
And where do we go from here? Is this something we need to look at federally?
Right. It would be fantastic if there was a federal law. Government absolutely has a right to regulate medicine, and so the federal government clearly can do this if they choose to.
As long as we're talking about gay rights, I do want to talk to you about the challenge to Proposition 8,
yes,
which was the proposition that passed in 2008 that prohibited marriage between people of the same sex. We know that that has been challenged. It has been declared unconstitutional, although there's a stay on it. Where do you see this going?
Well, the Ninth Circuit has said it's unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court, if they decide a rule, I suppose they could reverse certain kinds of laws in different states. I don't really know what the Supreme Court is going to do.
So let's talk about California, because I think it's fair to say that the passage of Prop 8 in 2008 was a bit of a surprise. Right. I don't think folks expected Prop 8 to pass. There actually may be, for the first time ever, a state that votes affirmatively in favor of the right to marry same-sex. I think it's Maryland that's on the verge of doing that, maybe a state in New England. Where do you think Californians are today on this very issue, if it went before the voters?
I believe that if the same thing as Prop 8 happened today, we get a much different result. And you see that in public opinion polls. There is much more acceptance of people's sexual orientation. People realize really this is an issue about love, and government really shouldn't regulate who you want to love.
So is it time?
Well, hopefully the Supreme Court will uphold the Ninth Circuit's ruling, and then
it won't matter.
It won't matter.
In our final moments, what has the response been on the street to your gay conversion therapy bill?
It has been overwhelming support from pretty much everyone except a small minority of folks who continue to believe that sexual orientation is a medical condition or disease that requires some sort of cure. Okay, his name is Ted Lieu. He is a member of the California State Senate. When we come back, we'll be speaking with James Lee. He is part of the No on B campaign, a measure in Los Angeles County that would require condom use on the sets of adult films. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. Glad you're still with us. Our guest, James Lee, we went to college together. We haven't seen each other since college, but we've kind of been in touch. I mean, we've known of each other's careers, and so it's good to see you, man.
Pleasure. I've got to admire you from afar.
You're very kind. You're very kind. And not surprisingly, we both wound up in politics. I'm a journalist. You've been working for several campaigns, including Governor Pete Wilson, Senator Pete Wilson. Now you're working on a campaign I never would have expected. It deals
for a Republican, at least.
Exactly, for a Republican, I would say. And that deals with the Los Angeles County Measure B.
Yes.
Tell us what Measure B is.
Well, Measure B is a proposal that would set up a permitting inspection system to mandate the use of condoms in basically all adult film shoots.
And I mentioned this to you intuitively. That feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You are on the opposition side, so why don't you explain to us why you believe that a vote for Measure B would be a mistake for Los Angeles County?
Well, you know, the funny thing in the ballot initiatives, you know, sometimes you get great ideas and sometimes you get dumb ideas. This is probably the dumbest idea we've had.
But it's interesting because, again, intuition suggests, of course, look, we've had an HIV epidemic, and we know that unsafe sex practices can result in HIV infection.
Yeah.
But what I have learned in reading it, again, I'm not taking a position, that it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, you know, the fact of the matter is that, you know, HIV is a problem in virtually every other community that doesn't get tested on a regular basis, whether or not it's in the general public or other activities. The adult film business is the one business that's probably the most tested business and the most tested population in the state.
And as I understand it, there has not been an HIV infection in Los Angeles County amongst adult film stars since 2004.
Well, industry-wide.
Industry-wide? Oh, yeah. Industry-wide. Yeah. So it's not even just LA County.
Across the entire industry in the United States, for example.
And why is that happening?
Well, because, you know, every performer has to be tested every 14 or 28 days. And they're screened with 4 different tests: an HIV test, a chlamydia test, a gonorrhea test, and a syphilis test.
Yeah, it's not just HIV.
Yeah, it's for all STDs. And what happens is that, you know, you can't work without being cleared. And there's a central database that provides that clearance. But not only that, when performers come onto the set, they're so scrupulous about status that they will actually ask each other for their testing results before they actually do work.
But as I understand it, the biggest issue is not so much the safety aspect, because we all yearn for safety. It's what it could do for jobs, and that's what your concern is as an opposition member of the Measure B campaign.
Yeah, and the thing that people don't understand is that, you know, you have to make product that the consumer wants. And let's face it, porn is a very big product that's consumed all across the world. And the demand for that product is for productions that don't have condom usage in it.
Tell us what happened in 1998.
You know, in 1998, there was an HIV infection that occurred, and the industry went to an all-condom basis. And what happened was that a lot of studios saw their sales fall by 30%, literally overnight. And what happens is that the industry realized, okay, the consumer doesn't want this, so what can we do to make our performers safer? And that was to implement a testing program that was so rigorous and so difficult to evade that literally it's worked beautifully in the last 8 years.
And so should Measure B pass, what are the predictions based upon your research and analysis?
Well, it's not a prediction, it's a statement of fact. The industry said it's going to move. It's going to take its 10,000 jobs, it's $1 billion in local tax revenue, and it's going to go across the border and go to other states. And believe me, there's a long line of states and governors and mayors that are really eager to go ahead and bring those jobs into that state.
And I think about our friends in Nevada, for example, who arguably have been quite effective stealing jobs from California. And, you know, for better or for worse, Nevada, I don't know, how do I say this? You know, I think they'd welcome adult, I mean, there are some counties in Nevada, maybe one that legalizes prostitution.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that, you know, there's a lot of misinformation going on about, you know, where porn can be filmed and so forth and stuff like that. And the real fact of the matter is that porn is filmed everywhere in America right now. And the definition of porn, too, is also, under this initiative, is also a big issue. Because, for example, it defines a producer as anyone that shoots, directs, or finances, or distributes, you know, adult content. So if you and your wife, or, you know,
won't happen, but be that as it may,
but, you know, you guys you know, shoot something with an iPhone, you put it up on the web, you could fall under this measure.
Is it criminal?
Well, you would be fined.
Right.
and frankly, the county would have to find a way to fine you.
Right, right. No,
So
clearly.
there's a whole enforcement mechanism you got to set up beyond just the permitting. And at the end of the day, it doesn't make anybody really safe, because the net effect of this measure is going to force a lot of productions to go underground, people drop out of testing, and make things more unsafe.
What's interesting is the proponent of this measure is an organization I've known for many years. It's the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I mean, we know them to be a group that has done some outstanding work. We've seen their billboards around town. Yeah. That's a difficult opponent.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, it's a lot of people don't understand the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is a massively large corporation. They have their own insurance program, they have their own drug program, their own treatment program, and they're spending millions of dollars on this campaign.
Did the porn industry ask for this, or did the AIDS Healthcare Foundation do it? I mean, why is this happening?
And that's the funny thing. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation not once ever came to the porn industry and said, hey, look, we think there's a problem. We want to know more about what you guys do in testing. We want to talk to porn performers, and we want to go ahead and try to fix this perceived problem. And they never did that. In fact, what happened was that the only people that they have to come out on their side in their TV advertisements, for example, are folks, actors, for example, that they had to pay. In one case, we had one of those actors come to us and ask us for $10,000 to not appear in their commercials.
Oh my.
And it's a very distasteful situation. It's bad. You got the AIDS Healthcare Foundation now trying to compare the porn industry to like prostitution or other really nefarious things, and try to denigrate this industry, which really, frankly, employs 10,000 people who aren't involved in that business, but on the back end.
I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in the 70s and 80s, and it's fair to say that the San Fernando Valley was ground zero for the porn industry. And I had friends whose parents were in porn. They were not performers. They tended to be on the business side, and they did well.
Yeah, and the thing to remember is that porn now is a global business. It's not just LA. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's concentrated in LA, and the testing occurs here, and the industry is based here. But frankly, there's competition all around the world, just like any other industry. And so the question is, are we going to outsource these jobs the way that we've outsourced pretty much every other industry in LA?
What's interesting is, like you said, you come from the Republican Party. One of our colleagues from USC, who's been a political activist for years, an outstanding field operative, comes from the Democratic Party. Sue Burnside. Hello, Sue. You're working on this campaign together.
Yeah, and that's,
I never would have predicted that.
And that should tell people right away a couple things. One, you have Democrats and Republicans working against this measure.
Where are the parties on this?
The LA County Republican Party has endorsed our side.
So they're no on Measure B.
They're no on Measure B. The Democratic Party has not taken a position. They've chosen to not endorse in this election at all.
Which, in some ways, as an observer, says a lot.
Yeah, and
because I'm sure they have a lot of pressure from the AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
Yeah, and I think it also says a lot when 22 chambers of commerce throughout LA County, VICA, the Valley Industry Commerce Association, the largest business group in the San Fernando Valley, have all come out in no against this initiative.
Again, how do you deal with the intuitive nature of this initiative? To me, that's your biggest obstacle.
Well, I would encourage every voter to open up their sample ballot, open up their ballot arguments, and read the arguments. And actually understand what this initiative proposes. This isn't just about condoms. It's about jobs. It's about making a public health situation, frankly, worse. Because right now the industry has done such a great job on testing, we have no infection. So where's the crisis?
Is there a constitutional challenge if it passes?
Well, I mean,
or a challenge, any challenge.
We don't want to get into even that. I mean, we want to defeat this ballot initiative, and we think that voters are going to come our way because, frankly, political parties, activists, community groups, business groups, a lot of people who are now focused on this race are beginning to realize this is a really bad idea.
But are they spending money that you need?
Well, that's clearly, an issue here. We would encourage people to come to our website at www.noongovernmentwaste.com and get the facts and really understand what's going on here. We'd ask them to join our campaign and help out. I mean, share your views on social media, tweet about it, share it on Facebook. But really, more than anything else, really understand that this industry does such a good job on testing. I mean, the joke is that, if you want to make sure that you never contract a venereal disease of any kind, you should
sleep with a porn star. His name is James Lee. He is with the No on Measure B campaign, which is on the ballot November 6th in Los Angeles County. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're still with us. Our guest today is Eloy Oakley. He is the president of Long Beach City College, one of the top 5 community colleges in the entire system, 112 in the system. I want to get a sense from you what it's like day in and day out at community colleges today. I recently read that community colleges were free until 1984. I mean, I was in college then, so I'm surprised I don't remember that. But, you know, tuition has increased, funding from California has decreased. How is it day in and day out?
Well, day in and day out, particularly lately, has been difficult because the community college system over the last 3 years has seen a significant reduction in its funding. I mean, Long Beach City alone, we've lost over $12 million just in the last 3 years, and we may lose another $6.4 million if November 6th comes and Prop 30 doesn't pass.
And let's talk about that, because Proposition 30 is the governor's tax initiative, and it's a blend of increase in sales tax, increase in income taxes on the wealthy. It has been polling in the 50s, but some would argue that's not good enough. You think about the cigarette tax, which was polling at 60, and it went down in June, 49.7%. So give us a sense of why. I mean, I know you're not a politician, but why do you believe Prop 30 is important to the future of community colleges?
Well, it's important because at this point in time, we need a significant reinvestment in higher education and public education in general. Now, you know, many can argue about how we got here, why we got here, and how this is a bad solution. But the fact of the matter is, it's a worse solution if we make the cuts that the governor has proposed if Prop 30 fails.
And as I understand it, there were no cuts this year because in the June budget, the presumption was that Prop 30 would pass. That's how they wrote the budget. So if it doesn't pass, there are automatic cuts, I think $6 billion.
Yes, these cuts are written into law because it's part of the Budget Act. So yes, the budget for this year, for 2012-2013, is built on revenue estimates that include Proposition 30.
Well, what about Prop 38? That is an initiative that increases income tax on everyone on a sliding scale. Does that provide funding to K-14 or just K-12?
It just provides funding for the K-12 system. It's protected specifically for K-12. It doesn't provide any funding for community colleges, CSU, or UC.
So if that passes and Prop 30 does not pass, there are dire times, as you would say, for higher education community colleges, UC, CSU.
Absolutely, and even to a certain extent K-12, because the K-12's budget, the state general fund, is based on Prop 30 passing. If Prop 38 passes, those funds don't go to the state general fund, so
right.
the state still has to make cuts on K-12.
Right, it goes into a lockbox, as they say. Now, I want to get a sense from you why community colleges are important. I mean, look, in some ways it's self-evident, but I really want to get a sense why, as we look into the 21st century, that we need to keep community colleges at the forefront of our higher education plans.
Well, I think there are many reasons, but the main ones I think of, particularly here in California, we have a workforce that is primarily of color these days and will increasingly be so into the future. So our workforce is changing, the demographics are changing, and community colleges are the gateway to higher education for those populations. So if we can get those populations educated and into the workforce so that they can be competitive, our entire economy in California is going to suffer.
You know, I've known over the last few years we've had a dearth of nurses. And I had no idea until I read this recently that 70% of nurses in California get their RN at community colleges.
Yes.
So if community colleges can't take in the influx of students, that could impact our medical system, presumably.
Absolutely, and I think it's already having an impact because our community colleges have had to shrink enrollment by nearly 500,000 students just in the last year.
And as I understand it, that is a true statement, and we've seen, I think it may be not quite in the last year, but the last few years, we have seen precipitous drops. We've also seen drops in the number of class sections that can be offered. I guess in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen about 125,000 class sections vanish. Why is that problematic?
Well, it's problematic because we have some of the highest demand in the history of California for our community college classes. If you think about the situation just here in Long Beach, we have the largest high school graduating classes in the history of Long Beach over these last 2 years. So we've got this bubble going through our education system, but they have no access to higher education. So we're in a situation where we've got high demand, but we're actually cutting courses.
And I also understand that about half of Cal State graduates come from community colleges in California. But I also hear on the street that individuals who start at community colleges believing they can stay close to home, save some money, get out in 2 years, are not. They're not getting out in 2 years. Right. They're lucky if they get out in 4 years. How does that impact the students specifically and our economy generally?
Well, I think it's having a huge impact because, as I said, you have this great demand for higher education coming through right now. Our community colleges, because we're having to reduce class sections, it's taking longer for them to complete their degree, and we've got additional competition of students who would have otherwise gotten into the CSU or UC system having to also compete for those classes in the community college. So we've got it coming from all angles.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about San Francisco City College. Mm-hmm. It is the largest community college in the state and therefore in the nation. Right. We know over the last couple of years, a couple of community colleges have gotten into trouble, I guess you could say, with accreditation committees. Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo, I think it's Redwood College in Humboldt, did I say that correctly?
Right.
But they're getting out of their trouble. San Francisco City is now in dire straits. I mean, the reporting on it is just damning at how serious San Francisco City College's situation is. I mean, I read reports that talked about paltry financial reserves, dearth of leadership, slow-moving style. These are not kind descriptions.
No, they're not kind descriptions, and I'm glad they don't describe Long Beach City College.
There you have it. So, but is it a harbinger? You know, in the end, you know, if the largest college in the community college system is in such trouble, does it portend poorly for the other 111?
Well, I think it sends up some real clear signals that we need to pay really close attention to what we've been asking our community colleges to do, how we've given them resources, and how we've allowed them to govern themselves. So I think these are all important questions that need to be asked in every community college district throughout the state.
And what's interesting is when you look at UCs and CSUs, there are no directly elected individuals that oversee those systems. Right. They are appointed by the governor. But for community colleges, there are community college districts, trustees. In Long Beach, for example, I think Doug Otto is the president at this time. Mm-hmm. So how does that play into this calculation?
Well, community college districts are very different than the CSU and UC. We don't have one governing structure. We don't have a chancellor's office like the others do. We do have a chancellor's office, but it has very limited authority over districts. We come out of the school districts. We come out of K-12 systems. Right. So we are independently governed through 72 districts throughout the state. So there's a lot of authority within those governing boards. Really, as we look at community colleges, the state of California has to decide how it's going to govern those individual community college districts, and I think the answer to that is create a stronger chancellor's office.
So my niece is a senior in high school, and I speak with her mother often, my sister, and there's a lot of despair in connection with the college application process. They'd like to stay in California. But all I hear from them, and they're not involved in the political arena, is there's no money. And we're not talking financially, we're just talking about class sections. Right. What do I tell them?
Well, I think what you tell them is that they need to be as savvy as ever, and they need to look for every opportunity to get ahead. So they need to look at multiple community colleges to get the class load that they need. They need to get in programs like honors programs or programs that give priority registration. And
you can matriculate to 2 community colleges.
Yes.
That's a very interesting strategy and a wise one, I would think.
Yes, and that's what many community college students are doing right now. So you really have to be very savvy, you have to be very aggressive, and you have to get into programs that give you that additional support and additional registration priority.
President Oakley, thank you for joining us. He is the president of Long Beach City College. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for watching Charter California Edition.